What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. It's Andrew Miller, just me, and this is our first edition of Postgame Live, recapping Mississippi State's win over Southern Miss to open up the 2025 season. I'm sorry, I'm reacting to comments. William Espy, what's up, Coach? What's going on, man? Glad to have you here in the chat. Glad to be able to be talking about a win. I kind of talked about in the last few pods. You guys might get a different version of me depending on how this game went. And in the first half, that version was on teetering of coming out. But fortunately for us, the Bulldogs pulled away there in the second half to get a comfortable win, 34-17 down in Hattiesburg. We'll see if a few more people join in before we really dive in. I don't know if people are going to. I fully recognize that it's the middle of the day, college football. We're still building this channel up. We have to get to a point where people care to tune in to see what I have to say while college football is still on the TV. So we'll see what happens. We'll give it a couple minutes. But for those of you who are here, if you have any thoughts that you want to include in the chat, this is going to be kind of a chance for all of us to discuss and get our thoughts out for the game. Obviously, we'll go through some of the big takeaways. We'll talk about the win as much as possible and sort of just hang out here for a bit. May not be a super, super long show. Obviously, I want to get back to watching college football too, which, I mean, I got the Alabama game on next to me, which if you see me glancing over, that's what I'm doing. But, yeah, should be a fun time here. We get to talk about a win. Tucker Medlin. Most teams get less than 10 of these a year. Got to enjoy them while you can. 100%. Mississippi State got a win. And after last year, when State got 2 of these, you are very right. We have to enjoy these while we can. And I do think the second half eased a lot of the concerns that most everyone had. The first half was ugly, and it felt like it was a chance. You knew State was playing poorly. You knew if State put it together, it's like, okay, they should win this game. But at the same time, with the way they were playing, you also left the door open that if Southern Miss had a few things go their way, or if State didn't get into gear, could have been a different result. But yeah, the Bulldogs get the win, and it's a positive start to the season. You cover the spread, then closed it 14.5, and you win by 17 with one of those touchdowns coming in the fourth quarter with the backups in. Plus, I mean, they got 3 points off an interception. One of the touchdowns scored was a total BS play where it should have been an interception, and ball was caught by a receiver on his back. I mean, State's defense really held up. You know, I think I expected more scoring out of the Bulldog offense, but I expected Southern Miss to score a little bit more too. So I think you have to take away the positives here. William, I want to see more of K1. Offense has potential. Penalties were horrible. Defense is much improved. I think a lot of that's fair. I thought it was interesting that they got Camario involved in the way that they did. I didn't really foresee that week 1 of the season. Oh, my God, Florida State just scored again. Wow. But, yeah, having Camario as a goal line quarterback I think makes a ton of sense. And not even just goal line, finding packages to get him on the field. Considering some of the issues with the offensive line, that might be something you have to go to. I don't think we're talking about a situation of you got to play K1 as your starter because of issues up front. It's far too early for that. But he is someone who definitely is deserving of more reps. And look, he's a good enough skill set and a talent that you want him on the field. And if he can find a way to help you out some because of those concerns blocking, because Shapen just is not going to give you much as a runner, I think especially after last year with the injury, finding ways to get a quarterback involved in the run game, I think it makes a ton of sense. Blake Steen get taken out in the second half. I think he got hurt. They showed him on the sidelines, and he looked like he was hurt. And, yeah, I don't think he played the second half. They put Albert Reese back to right tackle, put Timothy Lewis at left tackle, and, frankly, that unit looked like it played a little bit better when it was those two out there as your 2 tackles as opposed to Steen. Steen did not have a good game. We'll talk about that here in just a sec. Why don't we go ahead and – I got 3 in here. I'm good to go ahead and start talking. Let's get into some of the recaps. So, obviously, State gets the win 34-17. You score on the 6th play of the game, very reminiscent of last year with a big play touchdown. Seydou Traore wide open streaking down the seam. Great to see a big play to him. That was kind of the only really big play for the offense much of the day, especially in the first half. First half, they just really struggled to get into much of a groove because you started to see a lot of those penalties and mistakes mounting up. Defensively, I thought really throughout you played really solid football, but offense was just sort of just in a funk, man. They came out sloppy. Offensive line kept committing penalties. You had some holding penalties wipe away. Some of the play calling stuff from Levy, where you get a lot of these trying to run these jet sweeps, trying to run these swing screens to the perimeter, stuff that I know he likes to do, and plays that I think make a lot of sense on paper. He uses them as drive starters. The idea is we're trying to get a quick, easy touch out to one of our playmakers in space, take the thinking out of it for the quarterback, force the defense to have to go and try and make a tackle in space, and you trust your guys should be better. Southern Miss was swarming to the ball, and when State tried to attack the perimeter against Southern Miss, Southern had that bottled up pretty effectively. Play where Steen was wrapped up with the defender and getting run over was tough. Yeah, no, that was a terrible look, and it was not good at all. But yeah, some of those play calling, some of that play calling didn't make a ton of sense. I would have liked to have seen, I don't know, from a passing game, from a run game standpoint. I mean, I felt like obviously they're not just going to run the ball unless they're going to have numbers to run the ball. They're not just going to hand off willy nilly with a lot of the RPO stuff that they do. But there were times it felt like they could have taken advantage in the run game and just were not, because they were trying to scheme some things up. A lot of the passing game was very much just the base stuff. You didn't see much of a wide array of concepts. And I think some of those quick little schemed up touch passes were what they were sort of leaning on in this game. I think they felt that should be enough, and it really wasn't because of the way that Southern's defense was getting to it. I feel like attacking downfield, attacking the middle of the field, both in the passing game and the run game would have been the answer a little bit more. And they kept trying to go to the perimeter, and it just didn't work out all that well, which in the second half, it looked a little bit better. Trey Clark, I thought the O-line settled when Reese went to right tackle, Lewis to left tackle. I agree. They looked better up front once that happened. But yeah, first half, man, offense just kept getting in its own way. And I know Southern has that long scoring drive in the first half, and I saw some of the reactions of, oh my God, here we go again. You know, Coleman Hutzler, same old problems. The three-man front thing, which I'm going to have to comment on that when we get to the defense later, because I think people overblow that way too much. Same old defense, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, I think they had like one big play off of a busted coverage. And then you have one big play where Kelly Jones doesn't get his head turned around and the guy just makes a crazy catch. And they score a stupid touchdown, like a touchdown that's not going to be replicable. When ultimately the defense should have had him stopped a couple times. You had guys in the backfield on a few plays. You got him in some third downs. And obviously there you have that play at the end that they end up scoring on. Like it should have been a pick six going the other way. If Hunter Washington just catches that football instead of getting a finger on it, he's running back for 6, and we're not even really having much of a discussion here. Instead, they make a crazy catch and score. But, I mean, I thought the defense played really well, and let me go ahead and get into that. Defensively, Mississippi State played a game that I think you can build off of going forward. I felt throughout the game they did a great job of keeping everything in front of them. They did a great job of running to open ball carriers. They did a great job of preventing explosive plays down the field. And so I mentioned the three-man front thing. People were so ticked off, like, oh my God, we're doing these three-man front looks again. It's not like Southern was just gashing those looks. I think people had this idea of every time we went to a three-man front, Southern was getting 5 yards a gain. Like, yeah, they had a couple decent runs, but a lot of times when they were doing that, the defensive line held up enough to slow down the ball carrier, and then you have linebackers and safeties coming in to make the stop. And that's kind of the point. When you play that style of defense, you are playing bend, don't break. You are playing with the idea of we are trying to limit the damage. We are trying to prevent explosive plays, keep it all in front of us. We are trusting we can go up and make a tackle, and trusting that the offense is not going to be able to sustain this over several plays. And that's exactly what happened. I put it out. They gave up 4.07 yards per play. That is the fewest they have allowed in a game since their season opener a year ago against Eastern Kentucky. And for State's defenses post, the elite units of 2018 and then 2017 was really good defense too. 4 yards of play of defense allowed or just over is really good. Like you will take that all day. And even against some non-conference teams, because I look back, there's some state defenses that we looked at as good defenses that gave up more to non-conference games per play than that. No, they didn't have a ton of negative plays. I think it was 3 tackles for loss. You had 1 sack. You did get the 1 interception. Brylan Lanier making a great play on the ball there. But look, they weren't forcing a ton of huge havoc plays, although 2 4th-and-1 stops or 4th and short stops. You love to see it. But they were just doing a good job of limiting what Southern Miss could do offensively. Again, they were trusting Southern Miss's best chance of having success in this game was going to be hitting big plays. You question State's corners, and we'll talk about that here just in a second. I see Tucker's comment on that, and he's absolutely right. They played a great game. But you were concerned about State's corners. You knew Southern Miss has some good receivers. You knew that Braylon Braxton's a guy who's a playmaker at quarterback. The concern was if you let Southern Miss hit a bunch of big plays, that's how they get into this game. And I saw a lot of people talking about they want to see aggression. They don't want to see the 3-man front. People have this mindset of like, well, State needs to be this attacking style on defense. And don't get me wrong, it's fun to watch, but I fully understand the mindset in this game of like Southern Miss over the course of 4 quarters, because of the guys we have on defense, and it is better talent than we had a year ago, they should not be able to sustainably drive and move the ball and put points on the board. You can't, they should not be able to put together these long 60, 70 play drives, 10 plus plays over and over and over again to put points on the board. We are trusting that our guys are going to win out more often than not, force them to have to run more plays in order to move the ball. And it worked out. That game plan, I think, was the correct approach to take going into this. And that includes doing some of the 3-man front stuff. Look, because one, their defensive line is better up front this year. I know they didn't have as many, plays burst into the backfield as you would have liked to have seen. There were a few, though. But they did a good job of clogging up lanes. And that's a big thing. When you're running that style of defense, and even when they went to the 4-down front, they're really still doing the same thing. A lot of the style of defense State is designed around, trying to play is designed around this idea of do not let them, when they run inside zone, the most basic run play there is, don't let them immediately get upfield. Stuff the interior lanes, force the running back to have to try to bounce it outside, and then trust that our linebackers and our safeties are going to get there to meet him for a minimal gain. That's what they did all throughout. That's exactly how they played throughout this game. State's linebackers and safeties did a great job of rallying to the ball carrier. It wasn't just Isaac Smith. I mean, I've got the box score in front of me in terms of tackles on the game. 7 for Isaac Smith, 7 for Jay Smith, 6 for Brian Lanier, 6 for Malik Silla, 5 for Nick Mitchell, 4 for Tyler Woodard, 4 Jerron Manning, 4 Darian Gillette, 4 for Hunter Washington, 4 LaKendrick James, 4 Will Whitson, 4 Bledsoe. Dude, guys were getting involved. They rotated a lot of players. That's part of it. But you also had a lot of guys that just did a good job of coming up and stopping the runner. And I will take that all day. I will take that every single game they play this year. It's not even just that it's Southern Miss, but this was a game where I think it was a particularly smart approach because this is an offense in Southern Miss that was not going to be able to sustain drives. The only chance they had of staying in this game and keeping pace with State, assuming State's offense wasn't shooting itself in the foot like it did in the first half, was if you gave up big plays. They didn't give up the big plays. Southern had a couple nice gains, but over the course of the whole game, they kept everything in front of them, which you really love to see. Let's talk about those corners. And as Tucker Medlin said, for all the deserved crap Corey Bell has gotten, the cornerbacks were really, really good. Yeah, man, they impressed me in this game. And the thing was, it was concerning going in because you get the news before kickoff that Jett Jefferson is riding around on a scooter and has his foot wrapped. That's a guy who was not officially named a full-time starter. He had the OR designation with Diego Brumfield. That's what they were doing at both corner spots. But everyone kind of assumed he was going to start, especially because it sounded like he had a good offseason. It sounded like he shined throughout preseason camp. And you find out before the game, it's like, well, crap, we're already concerned about our corners, and the guy that we think might be one of our best is not going to play. Well, Diego Brumfield played pretty well. He didn't get thrown out a lot, but the first time that Southern chose to test him, he stepped up and handled his business. Kelly Jones had an outstanding game. Couple pass breakups. The one time he got beat, he didn't even get beat. It was a case of he didn't head around, which was an issue for him last year. And the receiver for Southern Miss makes a good catch. That's not ideal. You have to correct that because if he does get his head around there, that would have been broken up. It wouldn't have been a completion, and that is a drive Southern scored on. So maybe they don't get points on that drive. But overall, Kelly Jones played a really nice game, and I understand you have to take quality of competition into account here because no, Southern Miss does not have studs at receiver, but they've got some good receivers. They've got guys who can win vertically down the field, and State didn't let them do that. State played tight coverage throughout, and State's corners stepped up, and they did it without a ton of pass rush. I guess if you were to look at a bit of a concern here, and there were a lot of times State chose to just rush three, and I think one time they got home with three with Will Whitson at defensive line, at defensive end, but for the most part, you didn't get a ton of pressure. You would have liked to have seen more of that, but it didn't really matter because they weren't getting guys open downfield. So that is a huge testament to the guys at corner especially, but also the guys in the secondary as a whole. They played a good game. Speaking of that defensive line, because I do want to say, Will Whitson was really impressive. It wasn't like every single play you saw it look incredible, but 2.5 tackles for loss, gets a sack, 4 tackles on the day. You can see why he was the big get for Mississippi State out of the portal. Very much a disruptor. Dre Bledsoe, I thought, was fantastic at nose tackle. You see why he won the job. He getting that stuff right over the center on that first 4th down that they faced. If you get a guy at nose tackle that can be a space eater, and then you have Whitson as someone that can be a consistent disruptor, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape defensive line-wise. What about Smith tipping the ball back in bounds to a teammate for an almost pick? Thought that was a high IQ play. That was so cool. That was such a great play almost. That was a really good play almost that you could have gotten really excited about. But yeah, man, State's defense, I thought, really rose to the occasion. And they played a lot of guys, too. They were rotating guys in the first half, frankly, names that I've barely heard of. Were guys out there running in the first half. And some of those guys even still stepped in and played well. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I remember a bunch of names straight up, but I remember seeing a few guys like, why is he in here? And he goes up and makes a tackle. It's like, all right, cool, that's fine. And then, the fourth quarter, it's mostly backups, and that's when Southern has 2 of their better drives and obviously get a touchdown there at the end. You're fine with that. The starting defense allowed 10 points in this game. And again, as we talked about it, and let me reference this. Here we go. From J.C. Dickinson, Southern Miss scoring drive, field goal off an interception in State's territory, which that was a huge momentum moment for Mississippi State where you got up 7-0, you force a stop, and then you get the ball back, and Blake Shapen quickly throws an interception. And then State's defense just goes out and calmly forces a 3-and-out with 2 big plays from both of your corners. So that was huge for the defense. But they give up a field goal off when there was an interception deep in State territory. You have a touchdown pass while a wide receiver's laying on the backside. Again, that should have been an interception the other way, just kind of crazy play. Garbage time touchdown against backups. Defense stepped up. It was a nice performance, and I'm not trying to overreact to a game against Southern Miss, but Southern Miss has some pretty good skill talent. Southern Miss has a good quarterback. Now, State's defensive line had the edge. Did you see as many negative disruptive plays as you would have liked to have seen up front? No. Yes, I would have liked to have seen more pressure. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more penetration from the D-line, but the penetration part doesn't bother me as much when I consider, again, as I talked about earlier, the way they are trying to play defensively is around keep it in front of us, clog up the interior lanes, and slow the ball carrier from being able to get straight ahead downfield. That's something they tried to do last year, and they just didn't have the body to do it. Through one game, it looks like they've got the bodies to do that this year. So, I come away really happy with what I saw from the defense. And the big thing for me that I'll take away is, the whole idea of Coleman Hutzler getting his guys in position, because that was the whole big talking point of, how much of it is scheme and play calling and coaching versus just a lack of talent. And look, when you have repeated issues of guys not being able to tackle, guys missing plays, missing assignments, that does start to fall back on coaching. But we saw in this game, I felt like overwhelmingly, outside of one coverage bust, the only time Southern's guys had a big play is if State missed a tackle or just I think about they missed a tackle, the big play with Kelly Jones not getting his head around, and then the crazy touchdown. I will take that. I understand you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss some tackles. You're not going to be totally clean. But they had guys in position all throughout the game. It's not like Southern Miss just had guys running free. There were stuff in the inside runs. Yes. Like last year, you could run inside zone against Mississippi State and get 5-6 yards a pop and not have any sort of problems. And UMass was doing that to them. Eastern Kentucky had moments where they did that to them. Southern Miss was not able to do that to Mississippi State. Allowed less than 3 yards of carry. Solid, yeah. And again, they didn't have a ton of negative plays either. Like, if it's 3 yards of carry, but you look back and it's like, well, there were some huge losses for Southern Miss, but they also had a lot of big runs to sort of counteract it, then it's more boom or bust. They allowed less than 3 yards of carry without getting a ton of tackles for loss. They only had the 1 sack. They just did a good job of staying in front of things, limiting what Southern was able to do. I'm pleased with what I saw from the defense. I understand week 1 against a G5 opponent, but we saw this defense last year. And even in games like this, you can't sit here and say that they played great throughout. So I've got to be pleased with what I saw. What's it going to look like against Arizona State? I don't know. It might be a lot tougher, right? Sam Levitt's a really good quarterback. Jordan Tyson is an outstanding receiver. I know Cam Scadaboo's gone, but they've still got some really good running backs stepping in. They got a veteran offensive line. The defense is definitely going to be tested next week, and we're going to get a much better idea of where they're at. But one of the things I said for me, and again, we have to keep expectations relative for this team, because I don't think you're talking about in one off season after what you saw a year ago, they're going to get back to being a really strong, consistently good defense. I think they're still going to have some issues here along the way. But last year against bad competition, State's defense still could not get off the field consistently. Against teams that State should be able to outmatch, they couldn't get off the field consistently. They got off the field consistently today against a team that they should be able to do that. So you have to take what you saw against the defense and be happy with what you saw. Other side of the ball, when you talk about the State offense, could be a little bit of a different story depending on the half of the game. So, first half was not great. First half was ugly from the offense. They didn't execute, man. You simply just committed a lot of dumb penalties. Blocking up front was poor. Pass protection was not totally horrid. There were a few times, though, that guys definitely got beat and Shapen was in trouble, I think especially in the first half. But it was more like even in the run game, when you had numbers to run, you didn't have a ton of success doing it. But the penalties are the bigger thing for me. And it's not just offensive. The full game, it was 14 penalties for 119 yards, I think. Most of those on the offense. Most of those happening in moments where it's like, okay, we had a good play. Never mind. And that was a big issue a year ago. And that's what bothers me a lot is I understand week 1 of the season, there's going to be some execution issues. You're going to have some mistakes. But there is a point to be had that, like, when you have 2 years in a row of this being a repeated issue, that starts to become like, are you concerned about discipline with the team? Now, and they mostly cleaned it up in the second half. They found a little bit of a groove, but still had a few of those errors get in the way. The offensive line, I'm worried about that group a lot. Blake Steen did not look good at right tackle. I know we've already kind of referenced it a few times here in the chat. He had some bad penalties, and he had some looks where he got whipped against a defensive front that he should be able to have an edge. That wasn't a good look, man. And if that's going to be your starting guy at right tackle, that's concerning. Now, obviously, he gets hurt, and in the second half, you put Albert Reese over to right tackle, put Jimothy Lewis at left. I thought they played a little bit better. That was a little better from what you saw. And look, you didn't have Luke work today, which limited your ability to rotate a little bit. You know, if he gets healthy, what does that look like? But O-line as a whole, though, is still a bit concerning. Like, there are times where they've got 5 blockers against 5 guys in the box, or 6 versus 6, and that Southern Miss's defenders are winning those battles up front. And I understand sometimes it's a case of the defense makes a good call, and they're slanting or stunning one way, and your guys weren't ready for it, and you get beat. I get it. Even being the bigger, stronger, more physical team doesn't automatically mean you're 100% going to win every single rep up front. It happens. But it was happening far too frequently in this game that Southern Miss was able to have success stopping State in the run game. I thought a lot of State's success running the football, like last year, it was State's running backs making plays. It wasn't that the offensive line was blocking it up perfectly. It's that State's running backs were making plays. And thank God you've got some really good running backs who can provide that. But You can't trust that week in, week out. Like, you've got to have better blocking up front. And that's a concern for me, obviously, because Southern Miss, I know if you talk to Southern people, they really like their defensive line and they like their linebackers and they think they got a good group. By Sun Belt standards, they probably do. Mississippi State's not looking for Sun Belt standards. Mississippi State still has to go up against Arizona State that's got some good pieces in the defensive front. They got to go up against Tennessee, who is very good in the defensive front. Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M. I know Ole Miss is losing a lot, but like Ole Miss has some very talented pieces on that defensive line. Florida's got some studs up front. Missouri has got some studs up front. I think Arkansas is the only team State's playing this year where so far we don't know that they've got dudes on the defensive line. They did last year, and they have the last few years, but this year they're replacing a lot there. That worries me for State's chances offensively because we saw it last year. If your offensive line is bad, there's only so much you can do. Yes, is Jeff Lebby always going to find a way to be able to scheme open some guys downfield and put some points on the board? Sure. And look, maybe this year if the defense is legitimately better, maybe that's enough to find a win here or there. But I really need to see that offensive line get better. I recognize you had a couple guys out there starting between Steen and Owens that got here in preseason camp. They weren't here through the spring. It's going to be a process. And outside of Arizona State, you get a couple games with Alcorn and Northern Illinois that theoretically you could sort some things out. But, I mean, look, you get Arizona State in week 2, right? So that's a concern that you're going to be losing – that you're going up against a team with a very good defensive front right away when you got an offensive line that's clearly not settled. And that worries me for what this team is going to be going forward. We'll talk about the running backs real quick here because, it was a really good game for them. Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell combined for they changed the stats for what I was looking at on ESPN, but 16 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown for Booth, 9 for 43 and 2 scores for Bothwell. They both had some really nice runs. Obviously good to see both of them get in the end zone. Those guys are going to be thunder and lightning for you this year. It was great to be able to lean on them and see them be featured. Johnny Daniels, obviously limited touches in this game because of Bothwell stepping in, but 4 carries for 28 yards, 7 yards a pop, including one of the best runs I've seen where it doesn't get blocked up front. Well, okay, I should take that back. It wasn't blocked up front because there was a free runner because it was 6 in the box versus 5 and 5 blockers, and Chapin chose to hand it off instead of RPO. And I think he made the wrong read there. Johnny Daniels, though, makes that guy miss and then turns into a big run. Like, that was very impressive to see out of him. So, man, we knew these running backs could be really good. You saw it in this game. The State should be able to run the ball pretty effectively on the day. 188 yards, 4.6 a carry. Ideally would have liked that to have been a little bit higher. You would have liked your top guys to be over 5 yards a rush. That kind of goes back to where that offensive line not being great up front impacts things a little bit. But overall, the running back room, that's a good group. You can lean on them. So, passing game-wise, I thought Blake Shapen was fine. I know there was a comment earlier talking about people on social media, already hating on Shapen, and that's a bit overblown. And look, I agree. I didn't see too much hate, but I definitely saw a few people calling for the change in quarterback, which we can talk about here in a sec. But look, Shapen 26 of 34, so 76%, 270 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The interception wasn't great. He just didn't see the linebacker. Linebacker drops and he's going to his second read there with Traore and just doesn't see the linebacker dropping and throws a pick, and could have been a really bad situation considering where you were on the field. Luckily, the defense stepped up there. So that wasn't ideal, but otherwise I thought Shapen mostly did what you would want him to do. I mean, again, the RPO stuff, there was maybe a couple times that you would have liked to have seen him either hand it off or pull it or whatever, but I thought Shapen played a fine game. I thought he did what he was asked to do within the offense. It was very game manager-esque, but it's not like he was having a ton put on his shoulders. Passing game as a whole, if I were to nitpick, I mean, the lack of explosiveness downfield was a bit of a concern. Obviously, they hit the 55-yard score to Seydu on the 6th play of the game. And you have a couple other big plays, both Anthony Evans and Brendan Thompson get some big run after catch, but the key is run after catch. Kind of those intermediate throws and then those guys making plays. And, look, 7 catches for 92 for Thompson's 5 for 77 for Traore, but again, 55 of that happens on one play. 4 for 36 for Evans. He has a few times wasn't really able to shake open. And then a few other guys, just a few catches here or there. There's potential with that group for sure, but you wanted to see more explosiveness down the field. And I know Southern Miss, they like their secondary. They feel like they got a good group there. Monton is a stud. Foster at nickel's a good player. And they definitely were, I would say, much of the game trying to limit State's ability to take shots down the field, although there were plenty of times that they were giving State single high coverage. And if you get single high in this offense, man, you really want to be able to take those shots. And it just felt like those weren't getting open. Obviously, I don't have the all 22, so I can't tell you for sure because going off a TV broadcast, you don't get a great look of what's happening. But I know Shapen's not afraid to pull the trigger and throw it downfield if he's got a guy open, and felt like he was going underneath quite a bit with the passes. And a lot of those throws to receivers on the outside, it was guys on comebacks as opposed to verticals, which says they couldn't win deep. Some of that may just be the coverage Southern Miss was playing. They weren't letting them get behind, but I'd have liked to have seen more explosiveness in the passing game. And, you know, it was a complaint for me a season ago that they were so reliant on explosive plays. If they didn't hit a big play, they didn't have a chance to move the ball. They didn't have a chance to score. They had to hit those big plays in order to be successful because they couldn't sustain drives. We saw in this game them sustain drives. That is a positive. The concern is that this is a team where you felt like you should have had a lot of explosive plays, and realistically, over the course of a season, you've got to be able to hit those explosive plays if you're going to be talking about really consistently putting points on the board. There's got to be there's a balance to it. You can't just be everything is 5 yards, 4, 5, 6 yards, just quick little dump offs, and then trusting that you're going to execute over the course of a long drive. As I talked about when I talked about State's defense against Southern Miss, like most teams can't do that. But you also can't just live and die off of explosives. You got to be able to be a little bit more consistent. So hopefully they can find those explosives going forward. But look, when they were executing and they weren't shooting themselves in the foot, the offense was pretty much fine. Now, the one thing people were interested in, Kamario Taylor gets a few opportunities in there. Didn't think we would see it. Honestly, I wasn't really expecting that, but it makes a lot of sense. Look, Jeff Lebby likes to run his quarterbacks in short yardage and goal line situations. That's kind of a big part of what he wants to do, especially because he tends to get receivers that are receiving types. Oh, sorry, not receivers. Tight ends that are more receiving types as opposed to blockers. And if you're going to have a tight end that's more of a receiver that limits what he can do as a blocker, that means when you're in short yardage situations, just handing it off to the running back, if your quarterback is also not a dual threat, it's kind of tough to consistently move the chains. So having a quarterback that could be a factor in the run game helps you out quite a bit there. And we know Shapen is a willing runner, but he is not a powerful runner, and he doesn't need to be running this year because of the injury. So it makes sense that the guy who is your best athlete is Kamario Taylor. And look, it lets you get him involved. He is a special athlete. You could set up some really cool plays with him, and it gives you a chance, this guy who's a borderline 5-star, to get him on the field for your offense. Like, I think that's a good thing to see. And yeah, I think that's a package you'll have to definitely see going forward. I saw some people saying we should see more of it, and I actually kind of agree. And I know I've pushed back against the whole Kamario should be a starter mentality, and I still push back against that. I don't think you should be starting Kamario Taylor over Blake Shapen. Shapen played fine today. He did what he was asked to do. It was very game manager-esque, but I will take game manager-esque, assuming they can get better protection up front. But with some of those concerns for the offensive line, if you're talking about being able to convert in short yardage, like, yeah, you might need to turn to Taylor here or there to be able to find some ways to move the ball on the ground and especially convert down in the red zone. If you're talking about we have Kamario Taylor and Phillips Bothwell as two power runners, that's something that I think you absolutely have to take. And look, you also add in, he got Braylon Burnside. Stonka gets some snaps or got a snap lined up as a Wildcat quarterback. And it was cool to get him on the field as well. You're seeing them get the playmakers involved. Obviously, Stonka playing more of defense this year, which I don't really know if I'm sure he did play, but I didn't remember him making any plays defensively. But it was cool to get him involved. Kamario needs more time to learn before he becomes a starter, but he can help us win games. I agree. Like, yeah, you don't want to be turning the offense over to him at this point. Unless you think he can do full-on what we saw from Jackson Earl the other night, which is just hey, man, tuck it and run and make something happen, because that's what Arnold was doing against Baylor for Auburn. It wasn't like he was doing much of anything special. It was more just like, I'm finding ways to run here. And maybe Kate Taylor can bring you some of that, and maybe you reach a point of the season where you need that boost. But I think he's someone that you can get involved in the offense. If there were something I was going to come away concerned with outside of the sloppiness, which let me say on that, I am willing to pass off some of the game one sloppiness to that it is game one. Some of those penalties are a product of week one. Some of those issues are a product of you're on the road to open the season. You got an offensive line that's still coming together. Although, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, the O-line penalties of them not aligning in the backfield, inexcusable. You get 3 of those in one game, insane. I understand, like, every tackle does it. They try to cheat that as much as they can. But the first time it gets called in a game, as an offensive line coach, and yes, I know they showed Levy and Loadholt ripping into the offensive linemen on the sidelines. I get it. They showed that. But if your guys are continually doing it, that's something you need to have addressed. That's like, you can't either. They're not listening to you at all, which is a problem, or you're not actually addressing that problem the way you need to. William says the illegal formations were asinine. Look, it's borderline, but at the same time, it's the rule. And it's something that last year they were emphasizing and saying, we're not going to keep letting offensive tackles be a full yard behind the center in the backfield. We're going to start calling a penalty if you don't have them up on the line. And look, you're someone who loves offense. That is an advantage for the offense, and a lot of the rules work against the defense. So I'm all side with the defense there. It's something like your offensive lineman should be able to get up on the line. Like, you get a little bit of cheat. You get to be like halfway. You get to be like on the center's waist or whatever. Or like, I think it's got to be helmet on the center's waist, something like that. You get that. Get up on the line. And that should not have happened in this game 3 different times. That cannot happen. But going back to like the whole week one thing, I'm willing to pass off some of the issues that it is week one. But again, the lack of explosive plays, including the run game as well. They didn't have a lot of big runs. Booth had a couple nice ones. Daniels did as well. But you would have liked to have seen those 30, 40-yard sprints down the field. You just didn't really get it. I think State finished with 5.88 yards per carry. Or yards per play offensively. Not good enough. That number needs to be higher. So this offense, again, you've got to find more explosive plays, both in the passing game and in the run game going forward. Again, not the cleanest game from State offensively, but once they locked in, I mean, look, that third quarter, 21 points, 200 yards, you'll take it all day. If you get play like that consistently, you start to feel really good about what this team can be going forward. Just wanted to see if there was any other points that I wanted to get to here, if I haven't already touched on them. So, I mean, I guess if I were to give out player of the game or players of the game, I'll do 2 per side, because I think it's hard to differentiate between a couple of these. Offensively, it's got to be Booth and Bothwell. Obviously, Brendan Thompson had a really nice play, which, again, Anthony Evans holding on that to wipe out a touchdown. What are you doing? But Brendan Thompson was good at receiver, but Booth and Bothwell really, really impressed. You can throw Daniels in there as well. I'll say Mississippi State's running backs are the offensive players of the game. State's running backs stepped big time. You got to feel good about what you have in that group. Defensively, 2 guys I'll go with, Will Whitson and Kelly Jones. I liked what Will Whitson showed, the flash plays up front, getting penetration, getting in the backfield for a couple 2.5 tackles for loss, getting a sack. If you can have someone that is a consistent disruptor, and then Jeray Bledsoe next to him can be that just force in the middle that's a space eater, you're going to feel really good about what your defense is able to do this year, because that defensive line is going to be so much better. But also Kelly Jones, he had the one play where he didn't get his head around. Tough, he's got to fix that. I thought he played a really nice game for State at cornerback, and for a lot of eyes are going to be on him this year. He's got to be really good for Mississippi State this year, with not having a true number 1 coming in through the portal after losing Bryce Pollock. So for Kelly Jones to step in and have a really nice game, that is a good start to the season. And look, if Kelly emerges as a true number 1 corner, and then you got a couple guys up front of the defensive line that are actual difference makers, State's defense, maybe they can be a good defense, or I won't say good, maybe they could be a mediocre defense this year. and you start to feel a lot better about this offense going forward. Week 1, look, you get the win. Obviously, first half was ugly, but I do think you have to take solace in the fact that for as ugly as it was, once you settled in, you really pushed away or pulled away from Southern Miss, and you clearly were the far better team. If you're going to look at overarching positives, one is the fact that it is very clear Southern Miss was not a competitive team with Mississippi State overall. That shouldn't have been the case, but it was a bit of a concern going into this game of what if State's not that much better? Like, what if they are going to be competitive with Southern Miss? So you were clearly better than Southern. That's number one. Number two is that when you did quit making mistakes, you were able to step on their throats, pull away, win the game with ease. And you look up and it's like, yes, Southern Miss gets a touchdown late to make the thing competitive. You still cover the spread. So I've got to be happy with what you saw in week 1. Overall, not a perfect performance. Not a performance, though, that I sit here and I have to change my outlook for the season. I don't think. I am concerned about offensive line, but I also feel better about the defense than I did going in. Kelly is the only returning starting cornerback, yes. He only was a kind of partial starter last year. Technically, Brian Lanier made more starts at corner coming back, but obviously he's more of a safety type, and he also played nickel some. But I think Kelly may have got a couple starts last season, but yeah, he played a good bit a year ago. Diego Brumfield only played in 4 games. You still have Elijah Cannon. I don't remember how much he played and how much he played in this game. But yeah, they need guys to step up at cornerback, and today, especially Kelly Jones, but I also thought Diego Brumfield as well answered the call. Shout out to Kyle Ferry. I'd be remiss to not mention it. Kyle Ferry, 55 yards, absolute bomb. School record of a kick, longest field goal ever made in M.M. Roberts Stadium, at least by the visiting team. I don't know about by the home team, but we have not seen a state kicker be able to hit from 50 plus. So it was really cool to see Kyle step in and have no issues with that. Special teams wise, I thought you were mostly fine. I mean, not that I'm paying too close attention to that, but overall, yeah, man, there was some sloppiness offensively, some week 1 weirdness. The bronze kneecap, I like that. But State played a complete game overall, and State gets the win. I will take that in week 1. I will take a 17-point victory down in Hattiesburg to open up the year. Going to be a lot tougher next week. They're going to have to play far better than they played in this game if they're going to have a chance against Arizona State, which I think you take what you saw in week 1. I think that's going to be it for me. We will be back on Monday, so I guess that's Labor Day night. Don't know fully what time we're going to go yet, but obviously we'll be able to preview that game against Arizona State, see if Ballard has any thoughts from the weekend of college football, if he's got any thoughts of this win for Mississippi State as we kind of put a close on that and look ahead to week 2. Going to be a huge game in Starkville when Arizona State comes to town. Thanks to everybody for joined in, and for those of you who participated in the chat, really appreciate all that. If you could, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, share the stream, share the channel, anything we can do to help grow this, and put that notification bell on so you do know when we do go live. Thanks to everybody, and I will see you all on Monday.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click Join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.